Welcome to conducting ongoing check-ins. I'm Joy Wise-Davis, HR Director for the college, for those of you who don't know. And joining us this morning is Christina McGuire from the Leadership and Talent Development team in Central. And this is the third of our performance management workshops. We've been introducing the new simple approach to performance management. We started off with talking a little bit about the system and known as PAT, the new Performance Appraisal Tool. We had kind of a kickoff email and then kind of talked about how it's going to fit in with our performance appraisal process. And then we talked about goal setting. And now we are going to talk about conducting ongoing check-ins. This will be the last workshop of the year. And Christina will take it away.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank
You
you, Joy. So excited to be back with the group again to continue the conversation around the simplified performance management process that CSE is currently implementing for this performance review cycle. And in previous discussions too and workshops, we hope that this is a discussion. You learn from us, we learn from you, and you learn from each other. So as we go, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to unmute and share, ask, or throw something in chat, which we'll be monitoring that as well throughout. So again, welcome to the workshop today. Hopefully you find this information really useful as you continue to lead your teams and groups within the work that you're currently doing. So as we've shared before, the simplified performance management approach, it is an evidence-based best practices that work to drive effective performance management with the three foundational aspects of the broad and challenging goals set at the beginning of the year, those regular and meaningful conversations throughout the year, and then the simplified and relevant formal review at the end of the year. And it's really simplifying in a way, but also, expanding the idea of what performance management is, that it's not just that one time of year form or conversation around the form at the end of the year. And really it's about, setting clear and meaningful goals and having the conversations throughout the year and that dialogue with employees to build that rapport. So we're going to take a quick spin through goals just to do some quick reminders and connections between the goals and the quality conversations. And then the focus of today's workshop will be around strategies for the quality conversations and also some discussion. So what is working well for you to share with the group, and challenges as well to help remove barriers. So given that CSE, we're a little over halfway, or you're a little over halfway through the performance management cycle, it's really about starting wherever you're at. Maybe you have been having quality conversations and goals have been set. So maybe it is refining, revising, revisiting how things are going, and maybe tweaking some things to do even better going forward. Maybe you haven't, just because of the flurry and the frenzy of activity over this past year. Maybe you haven't been able to implement these yet. So hopefully you see this as an opportunity to understand what are some of the best practices and start wherever you're at. What is realistic and practical for you? So I really challenge you to think through that today about how to make this work for you and your employees, given the context that you work in. In 2022, we have all been here this year. Difficult, challenging year. And while quality conversations are always important for performance management to be effective, maybe even more so important this year, as an opportunity to connect with your employees, to understand the challenges, the difficulties they've been having, the impact to them, to their work, and providing that support, that connection to employees through the quality conversations as well. So goals, last time that we met, we talked about goals. The purpose of the goal is to get the right work done effectively. And in order to make sure that the goals are effective, it's following some of those strategies there on the slide. So it's making sure that the goals are simple, specific, important, and measurable. They describe the what and the how, so not just being very clear about what needs to be accomplished, but also how that employee needs to act in order to achieve that goal. That they are aligned with the team unit goals and strategies, so employees are clear about what their contribution to the overall team goal is. Limited in number, so that they are focused in a way that meaningful work can be accomplished, and that they are also flexible. So flexible might in some cases look like a pause and revisit in future years. It might be, modifying the resources available, who's on project teams, or timeline as well. But ultimately, goals are crafted in a way at the beginning of the year, updated throughout the year in a way that employees can continue to be successful in achieving those goals within the time, within the resources that are available throughout the year, which again, may fluctuate as well. So once the goals are set, they essentially become the agenda for the ongoing check-in conversations. And by definition, the ongoing check-in conversations are an individual conversation between an employee and a supervisor that occur regularly throughout the year. And again, as we go through this information, these strategies, think about how things are going and what might be realistic and practical for you to implement to make performance management more effective within your scope of influence. So some questions before we go into some of the best practices and strategies. Just wanted to hear from everybody in the workshop today. Some thoughts about how these are going for you, and what, for those of you that are doing them, how are they meaningful, and also some challenges that you may be coming across as well. So first, just throw it in the chat, or maybe choose a reaction and just display it. How many are currently having regular conversations with their employees? And again, feel free to throw up. I see some thumbs up, which is great. Some yeses in the chat. That's great to know that conversations are taking place with employees. So awesome to hear. So lots of good ideas, hopefully, to share with others and to hear from you as well. So the next question down there, what are some benefits that you have found as a supervisor, or maybe your employees have shared from their perspective as well, some benefits to having regular and meaningful conversations? Yep, so see some additional regular conversations in general, yes. Some specific formal performance check-in, no. Opportunity to respond quickly to change, which is great. There's this idea, I see the ongoing check-ins is this idea of relentless course correction. So whatever's happening, you can nudge one way, this way or that way, in order to continue to support the employee for success as well. Nothing comes as a surprise, which is great. That's a huge goal, or that hopefully you've experienced as supervisors, that there are no surprises at performance review time. It makes everybody more comfortable and the conversation a lot more productive. So absolutely. Yep, accountable for progress, helps with the mental health and fighting feelings of isolation. Absolutely something to be really aware of, kind of dialing up that empathy and understanding the employee in the context in which they're working with. Yeah, so some great comments in here. I'm sorry, some are just flying by, so sorry I wasn't able to respond to all of them. But yeah, it sounds like that you are experiencing a lot of benefits, as well as, keeping the work on task, getting to know your employee, building that rapport with employee, and then also supporting them wherever they are at as well. So thank you for your comments about the benefits. So maybe on the flip side of this, that third and final question there on the slide is, what feels most challenging when you think about holding regular check-ins, or what additional support do you need as supervisors, or when it comes to ongoing check-ins? So again, feel free to continue to throw stuff in the chat, or unmute and share too. That's always helpful to hear additional voices in the conversation. So any challenges of things that maybe prevent you from holding ongoing conversations regularly. Employees not understanding the purpose of one-on-ones. Yes, absolutely. So we're going to talk about that here in a moment, about establishing those roles and responsibilities for one-on-one. That's also key too. Everybody is on the same page so that the conversations can be more meaningful rather than just meeting to meet because you need to. Yep, experienced employees. Yep. So those more experienced employees you might already have some rapport with and might just already kind of be like, yep, this is our normal operating procedure or how we operate with each other versus the newer employees, which might need a little bit more support and guidance as they get started. So great. Again, continue to add more challenges or unmute and share to ask questions as we go through this. One that we typically see, although it didn't come up specifically today, but a typical reason or challenge that we often hear, and maybe you have experienced this, maybe you've found ways around this, or maybe that you have heard your employees have shared this, it's this idea of time. That time can be a really big challenge to have frequent and meaningful conversations with employees. And we are all busy. We're all probably too busy at this point in the year, and adding ongoing check-ins can sometimes seem overwhelming when it comes to meeting with each employee individually over the course, quarterly over the course of the year as well. So ongoing check-ins, they should be intentional, but they should also be simple. So just staying with kind of the theme of the performance management process as a whole, and being simple, it's starting small. So best practices are meeting with individual employees at least 15 minutes quarterly. So hopefully there is a way that you can easily scope out that time to have those conversations with employees, and that they are also less formal. So I think somebody did mention in the comments about the idea of the formality of the ongoing check-ins versus that simple and relevant review form at the end of the year. That by design, these are just points in time throughout the year that you are having conversations with the employee. They are less formal than that review at the end of the year, which is that narrative and gathering additional information, which we'll have another workshop as CSE approaches that point in the performance management cycle to go into all of those details. But when it comes to the ongoing check-ins, it is about being intentional, but keeping things simple, starting small, and then flexing from there. So if you do have those experienced employees that don't need as much time, maybe it's a less time or less frequent check-in than those that do as well. The other thing too is that there are instances where you may be doing this and not realize that you're doing this, that when, back in the office, or maybe for those of you that have, started to return to work or have employees returning to work as well, an ongoing check-in might just be that, quick popping into the office or dropping by and saying, hey, do you have 10 minutes? Hey, can I talk with you about this work? So that too is also an ongoing check-in, and maybe a way to refine that would be maybe just to capture a quick note about that, and capturing some conversation points that you have throughout the year so that they are ready and available for you at the end of the year as well. We'll get more into those details here in the next few slides. But if you haven't been doing, or if you have been doing and maybe they just haven't been as meaningful as you would have liked, you can start at any time, you can refine at any time, and you can flex at any time, whatever works best for you. The important thing is, to start connecting with your employees throughout the year. Sounds like a lot of people in the workshop are already doing that. So that is really great to hear. So the strategies for ongoing check-ins, and this is largely from the quick guide that you would have received earlier this week in that pre-work email that came out from Joy. The first piece is establishing the roles and the expectations for both the supervisor and the employee. So to the comment that was added to the chat a moment ago, excuse me, the ongoing check-ins are a two-way street. They're a conversation between the supervisor and the employee. It's not just a time for the supervisor to come and ask questions or come in to give information, but it really is a conversation and a dialogue between the supervisor and the employee. So it is important to clarify these. If employees aren't sure, maybe this is a good starting point about refining your ongoing check-ins, that they do have a role in this. It is to benefit you and them and the work as a whole. So everybody needs to participate in this. So it is important to clarify, maybe as you have a new employee, or maybe if you're a new supervisor, just to kind of spend a moment to discuss and to share and to be on the same page about these expectations and who needs to contribute what. So for the direct reports, they should be, seeking feedback, asking for feedback, bringing questions, being proactive and, saying, hey, I need this, or hey, this didn't work out, or hey, this is what went well. As a supervisor, it's important to think about, are you doing these things listed here? Are you providing the clarity and the purpose and setting the frequency for the check-ins? Are you defining what success looks like? Are you clarifying how it aligns, how those goals align, how the goals throughout the work as things shift, as resources and time fluctuate? Are you continuing to align that? And are you bringing the expectations around the results and the behavior to the employee as well? So doing this at the beginning really sets, you and the employee and the work itself up for success. Maybe you've done this already. Maybe you have an experienced employee and you have, a really good rapport anyway. So this doesn't need to be done every time. It needs to be established. And once it's established, it probably doesn't need to be discussed again unless something, goes sideways or something, maybe there's a road bump, that it's important to kind of come back and revisit the roles and responsibilities for both the supervisor and the employee. So it's a great place to start or to revisit if something doesn't seem to be as effective as it could be. So once the roles are established, this is step 2 here, is really the start of the agenda itself within the ongoing check-in. So again, ongoing, as a supervisor, you probably talk with your employees a variety of different ways throughout the week, throughout the year, and ongoing check-ins are just that moment in order to check in around the goals. So just to be a little bit more intentional about those goals or those priorities that you set at the beginning of the year, making sure that things are still on track, they have the support, or they, what feedback might they need and might you need to provide. So starting with the agenda, it's really just a quick review. How are things going? And again, as you maybe develop a habit or a cadence of ongoing check-ins, it becomes less of a, step-by-step process and just more of a natural conversation. But this is just kind of the underlying strategies that help them, that support the effectiveness of ongoing check-ins. So reviewing and updating the goals, just, hey, how are things going? What's been happening since last time we met? If any projects, new projects come up, maybe there's a project that is done. Maybe it was a goal that, started and ended in August, so now it's done. Maybe something new comes up, so it needs to be added to the list. So this is just kind of a reminder that if anything does come up, new projects as a whole, or any new things since the last conversation that you have with them, that they are discussed in relation to the other projects and goals that they are doing, so that they understand the priority in which the work needs to occur. And it's not just something that's added to the list and then becomes, less focused for any one of the particular goals on the list. So step 3, so once there's been a review of, hey, how are things going when it comes to the goal, the next piece would be to provide feedback around that goal. So how are things going? So a really simple way to do that is to think in this 2+2 model, or use this 2+2 model, which is providing 2 comments about what they've been doing well to move that goal forward, and 2 comments about what they may need to be doing more or less of to stay successful in completing that goal. So another way to think about it is 2 comments to reinforce and 2 comments to redirect, if that is applicable to that goal at that particular time. But the piece it comes down to here is that feedback piece. So providing feedback around how they have been doing that. So a couple of examples to share about how these ongoing check-ins might sound like between an employee and a supervisor. This first one here, you can read the goal. It's managing a large grant project in collaboration with a committee. The supervisor might say to the team or the individual contributor here, Rav, you have that large project. I'm hearing great things from our college leadership team. You appear to be very inclusive about how you're managing that. So those are 2 things, or a thing, I guess I should say, about how they are doing well on that. And then on the proposal side, it appears that, you're a little bit behind, and having that conversation with Rav here about, do you have enough resources? What support do you need? Currently, it might need more attention or focus for that deadline to be met. So providing some feedback around the timing of how the project is going and exploring what does Rav need in order to be more successful or to stay on track for the goal. Next example here, excuse me, writing a process and procedural manual for a lab. Let's say this employee is retiring. So before they retire, this is a goal that they have. So in this case, TJ, or the feedback might sound like, TJ, you're doing a fantastic job reaching out to key people. It helps foster their support to make sure that the protocols within, captured within this manual are effective. Maybe something to do differently is that second bullet point. TJ, when I give you feedback regarding your initial draft, you had a rebuttal for most of the suggestions. While unattended, it came across in a defensive way, might miss out on valuable information by doing that. And going forward, I'd encourage you to be more open-minded and better understand perspectives and how you might integrate their feedback into the manual. So again, some things that they're doing well, but also some things that they need to think about in doing things differently going forward in order to continue to be successful or to be more successful. A model that we use in a lot of our leadership and talent development resources, so you may have come across this before in our resources that you've explored. It's the SVI model is what it's called, and it's just a simple way to provide effective feedback, or using it increases the effectiveness for feedback. And again, if this is something that you're already comfortable with, maybe it's just habit, but those may be less comfortable, or maybe you come to a point where you have to give more difficult feedback, this would be a good kind of fallback to help guide and provide a framework for it. So here it's providing information about the situation so what is the context in which the behavior occurred, then speaking to the behavior. So what action or inaction did the employee do in that situation? And then what was the impact? And the impact could be, or the results that occurred. The impact could be to the work itself, to them, to others, to the team. So there could be multiple impacts, or maybe there was just one big impact that you need to provide feedback around. So again, it's being simple, it's being direct. Using this model typically keeps things objective because you're talking to things that occurred, factual things that were observable. And depending on the situation, it may be kind of a once and done. You provide this feedback to the employee, good to go. Other times, depending on maybe where the employee is at in their development or the complexity of the situation, it might be a couple of times that feedback needs to be provided around this in order to help the employee be successful as well. So it might be providing it multiple times in order to, get them fully back on track to support effective performance. So giving feedback, ideally, it goes really well. So you give a feedback, the employee goes and does, they're highly successful, and it's great, but that's not always realistic. Sometimes you give feedback and it doesn't work. Either they become defensive in the moment, or they agree to do it and it never gets done, or they go and try to do it and it's even worse than it was before. So what happens if it doesn't work? So this isn't an all-inclusive content about how to approach the situations, but we did want to provide a couple of things to consider just to get you started, to kind of troubleshoot some of the more common things that happen, or how to approach, react, or give feedback in some frequent ways. So the first one is self-awareness. So it might just be that the employee is not aware or has a lack of awareness when it comes to the particular feedback that you're giving them. It may be the first time that they're hearing that, so that might be a surprise to them, which again, may cause some defensiveness as well. When it comes to self-awareness, to continue on, we all have varying levels of self-awareness, and our level of self-awareness might also rely on who we're with, the content, the behavior, etc. So one thing to consider if the employee doesn't seem receptive or open to the feedback that you're giving them is to ask yourself, is the employee aware of their strengths and their opportunities? Are they defensive? If they're not defensive, they're probably more aware of their strengths and opportunities. Can the employee describe how others perceive them? Those high in self-awareness are more perceptive to those things. So if you're not seeing their awareness, their openness to feedback, being perceptive or aware of how people are, or how they're impacting others, or kind of the weight that they leave when they interact with others. It may be that they don't have a lot of self-awareness around this particular situation, or around this particular behavior in which they're exhibiting. So as a supervisor, it might be more excuse me, concrete examples around the behavior. It might be just additional examples around this behavior. It might be something that needs to be revisited a little bit more frequently and to get more concrete about, what is happening, what they are doing, and how they are coming across to others. So those are some techniques to get started to increase self-awareness. Another thing to consider is their motivation. So if they become defensive, or if the feedback that you're giving them within these ongoing conversations is not well received or is not openly received, it might just be that they're not motivated around that particular work, or motivated to react or adjust to the feedback that you're giving them. Again, motivation is on a continuum. We all have, different variables that motivate us in different ways. And again, dependent on the situation, the behavior, and the context as well. So as a supervisor, it's understanding what is really motivating and driving this employee to be engaged in the work, and, done through conversations with them. They're building that rapport to understand their motivations. Sources of motivation, some of them are listed there. Again, there's a variety of things that motivate each of us in different ways. But some of them might be connections, relationships, status, influence, independence, control, sense of accomplishment, and developing their skills that go along with that. Some people might really like to work in a team. Others might like to work independently. So it's important to consider the motivation and to scope or shape the job to the extent that it reflects what is motivating the employee. Sometimes that's not possible. Sometimes it's just, you got to get it done. That's the nature of this particular but important goal. But it's also, it's always helpful to consider and discover and listen and ask the employee what might be motivating them as well. So ultimately, when it comes to kind of a defensive reaction to the feedback, or if your feedback doesn't work, it really comes down to discovering why that's happening. And maybe the why is lack of self-awareness. The why is lack of motivation or engagement, but understanding that to a deeper level, and then by exploring that or discovering that through conversation or through dialogue with the employee, and having a conversation about, getting their perspective as well. It might not be anything within their control. It might be something outside of their control that is preventing them from being open to the feedback or making the adjustments that your feedback is around. So exploring those, getting them back on track. And other times too, it might just be pausing and revisiting at a later time. They might be defensive because of the time in which you gave them the feedback. And maybe it was just a bad day for them. Maybe, the context of other things happening at work, at home, that is causing them to be less open to receiving feedback from you as well. So sometimes pausing and then returning at a later time helps the conversation be more productive, or the employee more open to feedback as well. And then the last step for conducting effective ongoing check-ins is this who does what by when. So this is a very important step. It's probably often forgotten. You review your goals, you get your feedback, and you're energized to go out and do, or the employee's energized to go out and do. The who does what by when step, it's this agreeing about kind of what was concluded or what we talked about, just summarizing what was done, and then being clear with the employee about what needs to be done by the next time that you come back together to discuss, or maybe there's due dates built in as well. It's helpful, it says there, summarize and note. It's helpful to document. It really sets yourself up for success or for easy reference, that when you do come back to the employee, that you have a note to reference with everything going on. It's just maybe helpful. Remember, as a point to help you remember. And then as they build across the years, you have conversations throughout the year, kind of builds to help support that narrative that you would write on the formal performance review at the end of the year as well. So this is a recap of conducting ongoing check-ins. So as we shared, they should be happening regularly throughout the year for effective performance management. It's establishing those roles and responsibilities when you do kind of start implementing, or maybe at times revising, the way in which you conduct ongoing check-ins. And then within the check-in conversation itself, again, keeping it simple, less formal than the formal evaluation at the end of the year, reviewing the goals, providing the feedback, asking for feedback for yourself, and then determining the who does what by when, or the next steps beyond that conversation. So with that, I'll pause. Questions that you have about this, or Joy, anything that would be helpful that was submitted to chat that would be helpful to address. I know some things were flying by as I was sharing. Just wanted to make sure questions were answered.
There was a question earlier as we were going over kind of the feedback piece, and one of the questions was employees or statements that employees should feel comfortable providing, or no, it was what about asking employees to provide feedback too? And my comment was employees should definitely feel comfortable providing feedback to their supervisors. I think that's part of that whole two-way street piece. And sometimes it's difficult for employees to provide the feedback, but I think by having these ongoing check-ins, you start to build that rapport and strengthen the relationship. And I think supervisors should actually say, I want feedback from you. What are your expectations of me? I want to hear, how am I doing? Let me know what you need from me to help you be successful so that we can continue, helping you reach your goals. So I definitely feel like employees should feel comfortable providing feedback to their supervisors. Let's see, I think you addressed everything else in the chat in terms of questions. There's one other thing I threw in there about the SVI method. It also works nicely for situations where conflict resolution is needed, where you're really focusing on the situation and the behavior versus the person. It's just a framework where you can just talk about here's what happened, here's the behavior and how it impacted me, versus, kind of saying you. It's more focused on, this is what was happening and this is how it impacted me. So I'd like to, speak from that perspective. So you kind of get a two for there with the SVI method. But I think everything else.
Awesome. And I will just add to what you had just mentioned as well, Joy, that as you, with employees asking for feedback and that comfort level of doing that, and as a supervisor, setting that expectation and opening that door so employees do feel comfortable. And then hopefully you have found, as you, as a large majority of you are doing ongoing check-ins, or that as you have regular conversations with employees, that rapport is built and that trust just naturally grows. So asking for, being open to feedback both ways, hopefully you find that's a lot easier, more comfortable to do as well. So another kind of benefit of doing the ongoing check-ins and building that rapport and that trust and that comfort level.
Looks like Carrie has a question.
Hello. I came a little bit late, and so I apologize if this was already addressed. So I manage, 6 or so people directly, and then I have a few of those people who manage, folks below them, right? So when you talk about having ongoing check-ins, I try to check in with each of my employees, all of them. So not only the ones that are my direct reports, but those that report to the supervisors. But that is a lot to do. 4 times a year when you have a staff of however many. So is the suggestion to make sure that your supervisors are checking in with all of their people, or is it the sort of main supervisor checking in with all of the people in addition to the supervisors checking in with all of the folks? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it sounds like, how should you as a manager check in with indirect reports?
Right.
Yeah. So I have some thoughts, but would love to hear Joy and others chiming in. Would love to hear how this is being handled from others. I would say it would be most important for the manager to check in with their direct reports. So that's kind of the primary relationship, I would say. Not that others are not, but that would be like the primary.
Okay.
And that so your supervisors that have direct reports, it would be important for them to be checking in with their direct reports to build that relationship. Mm-hmm. Now, feedback from your indirect reports would still be, important, but if you have the time, I would say do it. But if there is a time limitation, yep, just reprioritize maybe those relationships or where you're getting feedback. There also at the end of the year during the formal review time, there is an opportunity to get information from the indirect reports. So it's not that it wouldn't ever be considered, but maybe just how you're interacting with those indirect reports throughout the year is less of a time commitment for you if you're not meeting with them regularly. But that information is important. There might just be more strategic, effective ways to get that information. But maybe always having an open door policy that if an indirect report does need to come to speak with you about something occurring, on their team, that would be, available for them as well, or welcome. So Joy, or others?
I was just going to say, I completely agree. I know when I was in that situation, definitely not a lot of time, but it was just a matter of, making sure that I remained connected through whether it was just walk-bys, letting them know that my door was always open. And then there would be, occasionally I would conduct what were called skip levels, which would be maybe probably end up being once or twice a year, where I would just take an afternoon and do 15-minute check-ins with my direct reports, because that's all the time that I had. But at least it was a, hey, how's it going? Anything I should know about? And their managers knew about the skip level. So it wasn't that they didn't know, but it was just an opportunity to have that FaceTime and just say, hey, is there anything that you needed me to know? And then at times I would then just maybe have a meeting with that group and just say, hey, I'm just checking in, wanting to see if there's anything I can do for you. And that's it. But I think it's just letting them know that you're available and that you're there, because the time is so limited. But I think to Christina's point, it's just making sure you've got the relationship with your direct reports, and then that they have a relationship with their direct reports.
Great, that's good advice. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks. Great question too, because there's a lot of reporting relationships and matrix and stuff like that. So it's really good to be curious about those as well. So next up, we have some frequently asked questions that Joy and I just wanted to bounce off of each other, but also you to get your feedback about how you're doing this. So these are the things maybe that you might be wondering about, or maybe you have some really good strategies for doing these as well. So we have these three, they're all number one apparently, so they're all equally important. I'm sorry about that. But just wanted to talk through and share these. These are the ones, since these are the ones that most frequently come up in conversations or consultations that we have with supervisors. So the first one there, it's about preparation. So how should I, as a supervisor, prepare for an ongoing check-in? So I'll toss it over to Joy to kick it off, and then I can chime in, as well as others. Please feel free to chime in as well.
Right. So in the prep phase, especially if it's your first ongoing conversation, I would just have an open mind, first of all. Have maybe one or two of the goals, and go back, the slide that Christina went through in terms of kind of the back and forth, the two-way street, so you're going to talk about the kind of 2+2 method, and then ask for that back from your employee. What feedback do they have? Give them the opportunity, I'll jump back, give them the opportunity to respond, but then ask for feedback from them. And so you're just mentally going in, trying to get information, trying to give information. And remember, it's only going to be about 15 minutes. That's what I would recommend at the very beginning. It can grow to a half hour, but again, time is of the essence. And so you're just trying to do this spot check to get folks, you and your employee aligned on how they're doing, what are their pain points, what's going well, and trying to give them feedback and give them the opportunity to provide you with feedback. Are there any barriers there that you can remove for them as their supervisor? And so it's just kind of getting your mindset about the information exchange and what it is that you can do to help them be successful. Christina?
Yeah, all of what Joy said. And also, I think the process itself is, to simplify things, to make things less burdensome. So hopefully the prep that you do, keep it simple. It shouldn't be more than 15 minutes because that's the length of your conversation. So be intentional but simple, but keeping it simple. And then also too, to encourage the employee voice to be heard, or the employees to be more comfortable speaking up. It might be giving them a heads up like, hey, I want to talk with you about goal number 1 when we connect on Thursday, or whatever the case may be. So they have a little bit of time too to think through what they may need to bring to the conversation, and what questions or feedback that they may offer for you. But the prep should be easy and quick, as well as the conversation itself. And keeping it focused on the goals too will hopefully make it meaningful, but also short as well. Other thoughts for those that of you that have been doing the ongoing check-ins, other strategies that you have found helpful in preparing for the conversations. Again, feel free to unmute and share, or throw it in the chat. Either works.
Great idea, Karen.
Yeah. Google Docs.
Google
Yeah.
Doc idea.
Can be shifted into Pat. I like that connection.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, and to that point too, Google Doc or Pat, we'll talk a little bit about that here in a moment. It's anything, that keeps things interactive throughout the week. It's really important. And actually, we'll bounce down to the last question here on the slide, the third number 1 about the documentation, since that comment was made. But Joy, I'll have you chime in about ways to document these conversations. What are some thoughts around documentation?
So do you have to? No. Would you want to? Yes. And the reason that is that it makes the annual review much easier to complete because you've got all the information right there. It is, hopefully your employee will be taking notes because it'll be easier for them to talk about their accomplishments or their opportunities for improvement, or things they'd like to work on perhaps for the next year. And so I would encourage it. It's something that you can, again, you've only got 15 minutes, and depending on how often you have these conversations, you can pick up right where you left off. You might get interrupted and you need to, postpone, or you might need to postpone, and then you know where you are. I think it's just a really good best practice to document and have it there because of just to have that continuity. And so Google Doc, Pat is now, when I was using Pat several years ago, it didn't have this capability. And now it does, where you just have everything right there in the system. And so I just think it's a good idea to just have it all laid out, even if it's just, a couple of sentences. So you can pick up where you left off. It's great for action items, next steps. So I would encourage documenting.
Yeah, and the theme is kind of build a one-stop shop wherever that is, but not one size doesn't fit all. If you're comfortable with Google and that's how you've been doing it, great. If you want to shift into Pat, that's great too. Maybe you've never done it before and just start with Pat. Maybe it's just a quick email afterwards, and then you have an email folder where you kind of keep notes in as well. So it's, I think, whatever works best for you and for the employee. And if it's not working, switch it, I would say too, throughout the year as well. But landing on what is going to support that ongoing meaningful conversation for you and the employee. And then the middle question there, what if the conversation spins off into other topics? So Joy, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yes, well, those of you who know me know how easy it is for me to spin off on other topics. You know, I think that's the important piece of kind of having just a little agenda, whether it's in your head or on paper. Also, getting the input from your employee if they've got things that they want to talk about, that kind of helps out. Also, one of the things I was going to mention a little bit later, but thinking about, you know, do you want to have separate types of meetings? So I know there are goal meetings and then there are professional development meetings. Yes, they can be one and the same, but you might want to think about, you know, let's talk about where you want to go in your career during this time. Let's talk about your goals during this time, just so that you do have adequate time to talk about different subjects. If you're in for your goal, your ongoing check-in, and let's say it moves into something personal, you definitely want to give the employee time to speak, but then ask, you know, can we set up another time if you have other commitments? You don't want to obviously blow them off. I think you have to really just take into consideration what the subject is. If you see that it's turning into a more of a negative type of situation, I think you have to make that, you have to call an audible right there. You know, what is happening here? Is this something that we can table? Is this something that we need to work through right now? I think this falls in the gray area. You just kind of have to see where you are at the moment. But I think if you need to schedule, depending on the subject matter, you might need to come back to it, or you might need to, you know, handle it right there. There really is no black or white answer from my perspective. Christina, I don't know if you have a different answer.
That was a very complete answer. I don't have much to add other than to emphasize what Joy says, is that, you know, keeping the purpose of the ongoing conversation is to, you know, speak to those goals of that development, as Joy said, just making sure that the purpose in which the meeting was scheduled, that takes place. And if it does spin off, as Joy mentioned too, it really is dependent on the topic, that it may need to be handled immediately or may need to, you know, pause and come back and at a later scheduled meeting or schedule another meeting to follow up with that additional spin-off topic as well. So what are your thoughts to these additional questions? You know, how have you handled the spin-off conversations? Or I guess I forgot to ask additional ways that you have found it helpful to document conversations as well. So additional thoughts or comments about these two questions, or I guess any of the questions as well that you'd like to share with others in the workshop.
I would,
oh, go ahead. Yes.
I would say that one of the bigger skills someone else taught me along the way over the years is that when a conversation is not going well, if it becomes a conflict or just difficult in some way, it is acceptable and politely to end that conversation and say, we need to stop now and resume this at another time. And there are different skills around how to handle that given the situation. But just because something suddenly becomes contentious does not mean that conflict must ensue. You can stop and pause and revisit the entire situation later.
Agreed.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes allowing that time and space of that pause will allow you to come back to a more productive conversation. So I think that definitely great comment. And just to emphasize the importance of that comment, that if you feel it's not being productive, definitely pause and come back when it will be.
And that works for both sides. An employee could do that to you as a supervisor
Mhm.
and be prepared to respect that and step away.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. Very, very important. Again, building that two-way conversation or building that rapport with the employee. Absolutely. Thank you for that. I'm not seeing any more come in the chat, but if anything does pop up between in these last few minutes, again, feel free to unmute or add to the chat. But we did have a couple more slides that we wanted to share with you before concluding the workshop. So Joy, I will turn it over to you for this slide for next steps for CSE.
All righty. So we've mentioned quite a bit of this, but I think it bears repeating. As you get started, consider your role, your work, your time, to Carrie's point, your number of direct reports, number of indirect reports, how will this work for you? You've got to figure out what is going to allow you to start this and continue this and make it work. So if it is, 15 minutes per direct report per quarter, that's what it is. If you have fewer direct reports and you can do it monthly, perfect. But the point is what works for you, what's going to allow you to continue it. And I know many of you already have this practice in place. And if it works, continue doing what you're doing. The performance appraisal tool, PAT. If PAT is something you want to try, go for it. To Christina's point, if it's not working, or if what you're doing is not working, switch it. The only thing I say is that I encourage you to document and summarize the conversations, especially if you've got some to-dos for the employee. But be flexible, keep it simple. And with regards to upcoming workshops, there'll be dates to be determined in January. And then of course, we'll have the performance review workshop closer to the end of the performance review period on, just how to work in the system and that type of thing. So be on the lookout for that information. And those are our next steps.
And then a couple of more slides just reminding you of resources. There's a ton of resources out there. So if you do have questions, feel free to explore these resources or reach out to, I'll direct you to Joy first, but you can always reach out to me as well to get additional information. In the pre-work that Joy sent, there was the quick guide, and there's I think a 14-minute video overview of ongoing check-ins. So that also is a really good place to get started to remind yourself of the different strategies throughout. There's also this OHR performance management website that has all of this information on it, quick guides, additional information. On that site, on the left-hand side, there's also a link to the Performance Appraisal Tool website where you can get additional instructions and the quick guides for that. And I think there's little videos in there as well to kind of just get up to speed on any of the PAT, kind of the system mechanics piece. And then also the supervising.umn.edu. This is our supervisory development course developed within, excuse me, LTD. This has information broader than performance management, but where appropriate, the performance management site and this have similar resources. Again, to be consistent, it's all the same information. We're not flipping strategies based on what website you approach. So the performance management is specifically targeted at the performance management piece, and then the supervising includes that, but it's also broader too. So if you need resources about the feedback, about the conflict, about those other aspects that might pop up along the way of managing performance, supervising.umn.edu is a really good place to start to find additional resources on that. So with that, that is all the information that we have today that we wanted to share with you. Anything else to add, Joy, as we kind of wrap up today, or any other questions in general from participants?
One thing I like to say is, thank you for coming, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions.